I think a lot of you guys traditionally like check out after we go through the additional item information, but that would be a mistake,
The new
especially
line
this
items.
month, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of action right here. Changes to existing line items that are used on almost every claim, half of the claims that come through. This stuff really matters. This is where the big money, the big action is this month. It's just adjustments to existing line items. So what happened
Yeah.
here, Harrison?
Here is why we need to pause for a moment, because every now and then, every month when we record a video, we realize there's one thing that's super important and changed in that particular month. This is it. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Price List Update Summary video brought to you by Actionable Insights. You've got Harrison here, and you've got Whatley there. What's going on, Whatley?
Ooh,
How are we doing today?
We're doing great, man.
Yeah, there are 27 new line items to talk about. But before we get into them, first off, thank you to anybody and everybody we ran into at the RIA conference in Kissimmee, Florida. That was an incredible conference, super fun to get together with everyone, network, talk. There are a lot of new services, technologies, products. The RIA is talking about technology and moving forward and thinking outside the box. So it was a great conference to be at. Thank you to anybody who saw us, interacted with us, and it was nice to reconnect with everybody.
It was. I didn't know whether to fist bump, wave,
the handshake,
shake.
right?
A couple people came in for the hug. I didn't know what to do.
We're back, baby.
Right. Yeah, so sorry about all that. I'm just learning how to interact with humans, large groups of people again. So I think all of us are.
Yes, but in general, it was good. I think we have at least one or two other conferences this year that we'll be attending at, so we'll give you a heads up if we're around. Wally, this was the first time that we sat down at a conference and people knew Actionable Insights, and they're we sat down at a random table and people were subscribers. So if this is your first time watching Actionable Insights, a reminder, we are a 501c6 nonprofit, a trade association, a steward of the industry. And a part of our work is recording these price list update summary videos. We've been doing videos for 2 years, articles for 5 years about all of the new changes that come out in the Xactimate price list. And this is actually one of our free resources. But we have a ton of membership resources so that if you are looking for Xactimate invoicing templates with line items and example F9 notes, go check out the Insight Sheet database. If you like these videos, if you like Actionable Insights and the educational efforts that we're putting out there to make the industry a great place, consider becoming a subscriber. $7 a month, $35 a month. There's plenty of options and lots of helpful resources that go along with those associated plans. So let's check it out here. Wadley, we've got 27 new line items to talk about that came out in this month. And our goal here is to look at what line items came out, how are they built, what are their component buildups and yields, and ultimately, how are they intended to be used? So let's start off. I have here on my screen, on the left side, I have X1 open with the new July price list for San Diego and all of the new line items. On the right side, I've got the e-service center link. This is the wall of text that Xact puts out on the new line items that came out. And our goal is to add some color, add some flavor to these line items to figure out what are they and how are they meant to be used. Let's start at the top. I've got 8 new line items right here that are talking about tear out non-salvageable cement board and bag for disposal. You got bag, no bag, bagging after hours, no bagging after hours, cat 3, no cat 3 bagging, cat 3, right? All the variations we've seen on various WTR category line items for removal. What are your thoughts on the addition of these new tear out non-salvageable cement board and bagging, no bagging, et cetera line items?
Yeah, it's a sound addition. It's helpful. I consider, it might have been advisable to include maybe some concessions in the components build up for reciprocating saws, although I've never seen them actually do that. I know that you can burn up a lot of saws when you're trying to remove this cement board, Wonder Board, Hardy Backer. But that's even more the case when you have a mud installation around a tile shower surround, when you have what's called a troweled or Portland cement installation, and that's, you put the mud on the wall and that's backed up against what's sometimes called chicken wire, but more formally known as diamond lath. That will really eat up some blades. Long and the short of it is there's nothing really for that installation at this point. This is a step in the right direction, so this would be the closest line item, and it's certainly better or more accurate than like drywall.
So to add some context here, looking at the components buildup for these new WTR cement board line items, removal line items, you've got CLN-R labor, cleaning and remediation tech component. You've got material for this is a bag's particular line item. But what you're referencing here is line item 59. That is not a new line item. Heads up, not a new line item. But we wanted to bring it up in this particular comparison to say, hey, we've had line items for tear out, wet drywall, cleanup, bag for disposal. How is that different than the tear out cement board and bag for disposal? You can see a delta in the unit prices, 111 in San Diego for tearing out wet drywall, 149 for the cement board, which is harder to work with and takes more labor, et cetera, to be able to do it effectively and safely. Yep. So yes, good points all around. That it is nice to have this new addition that helps address some of the more difficult demo situations that remediation contractors come across.
Hopefully it's on the road to adopting some line items. So when you and I get the question on Ninjas that we get every 90 days of like, what are the warranted line items when you're demoing a shower surround? We can round that out. We need WTR line items for removing tile on wall. We need line items for what do you do with that diamond lath and mud installation? What do you do with the shower surround itself or the shower curb? How is that demoed? It's really unclear. And as a trainer, I don't really know what guidance to provide. So we're going to need some additions to the price list to really round that out, because just adding labor hours, which seems to be the answer to that question, doesn't really put us in a position to settle claims without hesitation. If I'm on the carrier side, that's a tough estimate to approve. And as a contractor, especially if you're a program contractor, you're really in a pickle. So
yeah, and why using labor hours is difficult is because it can be a very subjective matter.
Right.
Contractor can feel this many hours is necessary. Adjuster can feel this many hours is necessary. And then we're having a debate about feelings and not the actual scope of work of what needs to get done. Hence why in any Xactimate training class you take with Actionable, we focus on the ability to settle claims using the line items, adjusting the line items, and not having to throw a bunch of labor hour line items that are generally getting pushed back or questioned from the beginning.
Right.
All right. Two other line items in this section. They were around tear out, so I just included them. We now have tear out non-salvageable floating floor with no bagging. So we had bagging related line items before, but now we have no bagging line items for tearing out non-salvageable floating floor. Moving on. We have here a new infrared heat panel line item. Infrared heat panel per 24-hour period. So similar to a lot of the equipment we've seen used in mitigation and how it's invoiced for. Is only one component here, an equipment component around the actual infrared heating panel. Please note, as usual with this equipment, setup, takedown, and monitoring is not included. This you would need WTR EQ separately to be able to invoice for the deployment and breaking down and monitoring of this equipment. What are your thoughts on this new infrared heating panel line item?
Well, there's a long history there, which also includes me starting a fire when I had my full service restoration company.
Oh, take me back.
Go to the Insight Sheet database for this Infratech that we used to use. So this is a 1500 watt. Some of you folks have been doing this for over a decade, know what this thing is. So it came out, really, it was really adopted from the auto body industry, and you would use it if you were doing some paint work and you wanted to cure the paint quickly, which is fine if you're trying to dry like the side of a steel bodied vehicle. Maybe not such a great idea when you're dealing with building material like cove base. I was in a commercial environment as doctor's office. They didn't want to do any demo, wanted to keep the thing open as Cat 1 loss. We threw those in there and it started smoldering like the vinyl wall cove base.
Good,
that wasn't great.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so we were like turn a water loss into a fire loss. Anyhow, luckily we got that thing before it got too out of hand, but I definitely know that another San Diego contractor that burned a house to the ground using this thing. So what happened is Ernie over at Inject-A-Dry said, well, there's something here with infrared, but maybe 1500 watts on building materials, bad idea. And so about 4 years ago, Inject-A-Dry created this particular device, and it runs at 400 watts, 3.5 amps. And it's a much gentler approach to infrared drying. That is, you have to be careful with where you put it still, but it's nothing like that former piece of equipment. So love the fact that the price list responded to this particular piece of equipment. A lot of folks are using it. This is like dry in place type of thing, helps constrain severity for the carrier. And if I'm an adjuster and you were helping to dry things in place without demoing a bunch of building material, this would be an awesome line item and I'd be really willing to pay for it. One thing you want to note is the price is 00. So this is what we have is a settling line item. So
let me pause you there. Not just 00. People hear that and think $0. What do you mean?
That's right.
The price is exactly right here. Unit price $35.00. So whenever you see a line item that ends in .00, Whatley, what does that tend to
99%
signify?
of the time, what it tends to signify is that particular price is like, hey, we're going to throw a dart at the wall. We think it's close enough. And then
Done our research.
We've done some research.
It's in this area.
It's in this area, but you're inviting both sides of the house to provide feedback. So you can do that at pricing at Xactware.com, and you can tell the pricing department whether they got the pricing spot on or they are somehow over or under as it relates to that line item. And so
this infrared heat panel,
12 months, it's probably going to be very open to changing in price. So just be aware of that. I don't know what that thing cost from injected dry, well, generally, but a lot of the equipment, what have we seen a pattern of around 8, 9, or 10 days?
Yes. So any line item
paid for.
Yeah, the line items that have 24 hours or per 24-hour period, typically the pricing around those line items is structured so that the contractor will be paid back for that piece of equipment after approximately 8 to 9 days of runtime.
Yeah, but there's a nuance. I mean, that becomes less true as the equipment gets more and more expensive. So think of like a 400 kilowatt diesel generator, like pricing department is not paying for that thing in 9 days. So I think after the equipment gets bought beyond $1,000, then it starts to tail off where you couldn't expect to be fully reimbursed
in 9 days
for 9 days, right?
Okay,
but that's
makes
something
sense.
that's true like around air mover type price structures.
100%.
So anyhow,
good to know. We should have asked Ernie when we saw him at the RIA conference, what's this stuff cost? But we didn't know this line item was coming. So now here we are recording it and now we can talk about it. So Ernie, I'm going to be calling you. People want to know.
And then, you can thank the actionable staff because they're going to go back and make an update to that insight sheet with some new imagery and get rid of that old Infratech thing that's known for starting more fires than anything else this industry's ever seen.
Yes. If you want to know generally where the money goes that's invested in actionable, it's creating resources like this. So when a new line item comes out and there is potential confusion about how to use it, we want to create an invoicing template that both contractors and adjusters can get behind to point to is this is what would be reasonable and customary when invoicing for this activity. And then you guys can deviate from there, negotiate from there if the situation calls for it. All right, moving on. Shaft wall. We got a drywall line item, shaft wall liner only. This is labor and material here for the gypsum core board. I mean, simple description, 1 layer of 1-inch core board, installation labor, excludes screws and other things. Thoughts on this shaft wall liner only line item?
This is a big help. I was an umpire on a 14-story loss a couple years ago. And this was a pickle for how we were going to estimate the shaft liner. So this is like on the interior side of an elevator shaft. And it's a lot of times yellow. You guys have seen it before in a commercial environment. And it doesn't include like texture. You don't need to fire tape it or whatever else, but you just stick it in there between the metal studs. This is helpful. We didn't know. I think that Civic CM was the engineering firm on it. Like nobody was sure exactly how to price this out. So this resolves an issue in a commercial environment. Hats off to the pricing department for continuing to deploy some time and attention towards rounding out the commercial line items.
Nice. Okay. Kind of in that line of line items that didn't exist before, but needed to, like, let's talk about this vinyl deck membrane. You've had some experience with this stuff in the past, being a contractor, working on these decks. Didn't seem in our preparations, you were telling me a story about how you didn't have this before. So what is the significance of this new vinyl deck membrane per square foot line item?
So when I had my full service restoration shop, there was a town called San Elijo here in San Diego. And this builder came through and they had all of these decking systems out back of their property, all these track homes. There was about 300 of them. And they all failed on like year 11. So it was just outside of like builder where the builder needed to extend any relief. And so we were just doing one after another. And the neighbors were talking to the neighbors. But getting out there, like for the first couple, I think we lost our butts. By the end, we figured out how to price it, but we didn't really know how to invoice for the vinyl deck membrane. So I look at this line item, I was like, why was this not here a decade ago? But it is here now. It's pretty significant, the price structure, right? It's not cheap. There's a lot of components that make that up from a materials and labor perspective.
Yeah, in San Diego, $10.60 per square foot.
Yeah. So that's what we needed, but I think we didn't know that when we initially approached it. But I think this is and it's a really technical line item. It probably took a lot of work to adopt that line item. So,
I mean, as evidenced in the component buildup. So you've got an incredible amount of components. One labor, looks like almost 6 or 7 material components. So there's a lot.
You don't see that often.
That went into this line item.
You got it. So I like it. If I'm an adjuster, thank goodness that is there. I do not want to try to figure that out on my own accord. That's where you just throw your hands up before this line item and go, oh, bid item. But we all know like that has serious limitations, is just saying bid item everything. It's much more elegant for a policyholder, for an adjuster, and even for a contractor if you can leverage a series of line items as opposed to using a bid item.
Yes. And to build off that idea, that thing that you wish, that line item you wish existed 10 years ago and you never did and now it does. Reminder, actionable insights on our website. On the top right, getinsights.org, there's a section called Advance the Cause, where we have a line item request form. Part of what I do on a regular basis is meet with the Xactware pricing department to advocate for the need for new line items. If there's an activity being performed in the field and there's no line item for it, that makes it difficult to settle the claim. And we want people to settle claims and enjoy what they do. So if you watching this video know of a line item that doesn't exist, that you know should exist, go to getinsights.org. In the top right, you'll see Advance the Cause, line item request form, and let us know. We'll be able to gather that feedback and provide it to the pricing department on a regular basis. So yes, please help us help you. Now, continuing on, we've got 2 exterior line items here. We have an exhaust cap through a flat roof, PVC TPO, and we've got a gutter splash guard line item. Any comments, thoughts on these new exterior line items related to exhaust caps and gutter splash guards?
Yeah, splash guards are going to be for your interior corners. It's a nice addition. I'm not sure how I would have ever incorporated that as a contractor or adjuster without it. So that helps. Exhaust cap. Yeah, that's helpful. Let me riff a little bit. Go ahead and remove that vent EP.
Go to the remove activity code. Okay.
And then go to components build up. Like what trade is that going to default to?
DMO.
Yeah, some of like the ridge cap is now, the pricing department is moving towards updating some of the RFG line items towards RFG on the removal as opposed to DMO.
Okay.
It's not happening across the board, but that's something to keep an eye out for if you're doing roofing. So that is happening. And I think a lot of our membership would agree that's a warranted and welcome adjustment.
I would agree. All right. Not breaking anything crazy here, but ornamental iron posts, gates, and fences. As you can see, these new ornamental iron fencing, fence gate, and iron post line items are all related to 8-foot heights, 7 to 8 feet, 8 feet. So this is just an example of them building off of other line items that previously existed to address a new building height that is required. It is of my unprofessional opinion that the world is getting crazier and crazier, and so people want to build their ornamental fences, iron fences a little bit higher. Therefore, you now need an 8-foot line item to accommodate new fencing. So it happens. It's out there. All right. In the EQC category, to finish out the new line items here, we have what is called an air curtain. I actually brought up a picture here so I could have it up. I can point it out here. Air curtain being that thing over the door that if somebody walks in or out, it turns on and it keeps bugs out and other aspects to, just protection, air curtain. So
I think it's for climate control primarily.
Climate control, right? I don't know. It always kept the bugs. I knew the bugs weren't in the store if they were getting buzzed out by air. So, but yes, we have air curtain per linear foot, high grade, heated, high grade, door limit switch. I mean, these are not cheap pieces of equipment. $419 per linear foot can show kind of the value of not only the equipment, but you'll see more and more of these, I assume, in commercial buildings. And this is another great example of Xact coming out with new commercial line items to ensure that their tool can be used appropriately in the various commercial environments that property restoration professionals and adjusters come across.
Great.
All right. That is the 27 new line items that came out in July of 2021. Go ahead and download the price list, check out those new line items, and see how they look in your various region. We now need to move to the next section. Not only does Xactimate add new line items every month, but they also change the existing line items. There are over 20,000 existing line items. So let's take a look at—
There's 27,000.
Are we there now? Are we actually at 27,000 Xactimate line items? Wow.
Yeah, if you include contents.
Ooh, we believe.
Structural is 21,000.
All right. So what I have here, left side, June 2021, right side, July 2021. And we're going to look at the changes in the line items that happened. Now,
I think a lot of you guys traditionally like check out after we go through the additional item information, but that would be a mistake, especially this month, because there's a lot of action right here. Changes to existing line items that are used on almost every claim, half of the claims that come through. This stuff really matters. This is where the big money, the big action is this month. It's just adjustments to existing line items. So what happened here, Harrison?
Here is why we need to pause for a moment, because every now and then, every month when we record a video, we realize there's one thing that's super important and changed in that particular month. This is it. There was a change. Whatley, you and I have talked about silicone caulk and plumbing and wet walls in our training, public Xactimate trainings, flying around the country, wherever we are, we've talked about silicone caulk and plumbing fixtures and things like that. We need to take a look at these sink line items right here and figure out what happened. Because when you go to the Price List Update Summary, first of all, or the e-service center explanation, you'll see here, modified included field of the replace definition and added a material component assembly to the replace assembly to include material assumption for caulking. So this was interesting. Like, oh, what's this change? So on the left side, I've got June. On the right side, I've got July. Let's take a look at the sink single and see what happened here. And you'll notice immediately that there is an additional component in the new price list. As promised, Xact added material of silicone caulk. So naturally, the first thing that you and I do in preparing for these videos is jump right into the assembly of info so we can take a look at the yields. Help me explain to those watching this video, what does this mean in this new material component and how are we supposed to interpret these yields?
Right. So we'd first have to recognize that historically, the pricing department was assuming that the labor and the materials associated with silicone caulk, when you're installing a sink, a single or double sink, it was just assumed, because how is this pricing arrived at? Let's look at it from historically. The pricing department reached out to a myriad of plumbers and said, what would you charge to include a single basin sink? What would you charge to include a dual basin sink? Okay, so that's the price structure. And then they did a little bit to build that up in a technical way between their labor and materials. But then there became some impasse in a claims environment. And I have a feeling some of you carriers that are watching this video, stakeholders, reached out to the pricing department like, these contractors are including silicone caulk to augment their sink installs. And so then we need to get underneath the hood of this as the pricing department and go, okay, what was the intention? How do we get to these pricing? What's going to be fair and reasonable moving forward? And the pricing department determined that probably the best thing to do is just to include some concessions for materials for the silicone caulk, but leave labor unmolested. So there's no adjustment to the labor yields here. Because it's always historically been done and assumed, but they're going to include the materials. So there's something to understand when you look at this line item, on the right here for material silicone caulk 10-ounce tube, that's really not, it's not 40 cents for a 10-ounce tube, right? What that's doing is it's rolling up into the core component line item, which is $6.32.
Right down here, you can see the material component price for a 10-ounce roll of silicone caulk.
Right. And so we went out and we confirmed that on Home Depot's website, right? So depending on what grade of silicone caulk, that seemed right in there. Okay, so it's $6.32 for silicone caulk. Any reasonable person agrees that that's probably on point. And now it just gets down to a yield conversation. And if you look at the direct yield, there's a delta of 10% between the 1730 and then 1557. What that is there's 10% waste. And that's really customary for materials line items, that there's 10% waste. Same thing with like R13 insulation and so on. There's a little bit of waste in there. Okay, so there's 10%. That's how we get to 1550. In effect, if you do the math and you take $6.32 and then you divide that out against what is the price per unit up top of 40.
And unit being one sink in this example.
You got it. You get to around 15, which is your yield. So we can do 15 sinks with one 10-ounce tube of silicone caulk. So some of you guys might have an opinion about that, whether that is adequate or not. I think that if I'm to look at this really objectively, the answer is it depends. So like an undermount sink is probably going to require more silicone caulk because you're using it as a kind of a binding material and sealer as you push that up against the underside of the granite or the plywood subdeck. And then you're coming up over the top of it, right? And then sealing it. So you're doing that several times. And when you're doing that, you're doing it in a zigzag pattern down below. Maybe not just one loop. The same way you would put ketchup on a hot dog, right? Like,
4th of July.
You got it.
Let's do it.
So anyhow, you might, it might be kind of, let's say inadequate if you look at it like that. But if you think about it like an overmount sink, you can get away with a lot less silicone caulk and just a small bead around the top when you drop it in, and then do a small bead around the exterior. So it's not so crazy, but that yield isn't like the linear feet. Somebody might look at that and be like, oh, 15 linear feet. That's not exactly what's going on. It's saying like, how many sinks could you do with a 10-ounce tube of silicone caulk? So,
and to add some flavor there real quick, we'll jump to the sink double line item. This is another thing that we looked at as a part of it to look at. Let me go to the silicone caulk material and take a look at the assembly info. It comes out to about 11.5 instead of 15.5, which would make sense. You would use more caulk material per tube on a double sink. Therefore, you can do less double sinks per tube than you could a single sink.
You got it. So anyhow, yeah, that's where we're at with the silicone caulk. Unfortunately, if you're a contractor, the price didn't really move at all. 40 cents on a $284 line item. And now you're generally precluded from using silicone caulk when you're installing these sinks. So
as a separate line item.
Yeah, you don't win them all, folks. But what you have to remember about that silicone caulk line item is that was created and is intended to be used when you're filling like a 1/4-inch gap between two types of building material. You got it, Harrison. So yeah, that particular line item, and that's why it's $3.23 a linear foot. Right, that wouldn't make sense. Like if it was just around a sink to seal it. It assumes that you're using a lot of silicone caulk to fill in a fairly sizable gap. That's why it's in the MPR moisture protection category. So it's one of those things where it just depends on how you look at it. But it was probably the right thing to do for the pricing department to clarify things. I mean, you don't want situations where there's a bunch of impasses happening between carriers and contractors. So contractors, this was not your day as it relates to these sinks and silicone caulk, but it was probably good for them to clarify, because I think what they're doing is they're just reconciling with the spirit of these original line items and just continuing to clarify their original intention.
Anytime Exact is clarifying something, in my mind, it moves things forward. just because it helps people understand what exactly is included in this line item or not included in this line item. And let's at least start to have a conversation from there, not debate for a week about what's included and what's not.
Or maybe not have to have a conversation at all.
Hey, maybe. And that's what I'm talking about.
Ideal.
Let's get some claims settled around here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on. Additional changes to the tile cement board. So kind of we talked about the new tear out drywall or tear out cement board line items. Often when Xact is creating new line items, they will look at similar line items that already exist or may have similar components, et cetera, to determine, do we need to make a change here? This is an interesting one for me. We don't always see a lot of material yield changes, but you can see here the only change between June and July on this tile cement board line item is the thin set material. When we click this edit button and we go to the assembly information, you could see a direct yield previously of 200, and now you can see a direct yield of 80. So kind of help explain what exactly happened here to be such a change in the direct yield.
Well, I really don't know exactly what happened. What they thought the thin set was going to be able to be applied a 50-pound bag over 180 square feet. And I think when they did whatever research was required, and sometimes they get out there in the field and they look at what trades folks are doing, maybe they called around, they recognized that, whoa, I think that we were really generous with how far that thin set, how thin was that setting, right? And now they're recognizing that it's closer to, for every pound of thin set, maybe get 1.25 square feet. And so that's closer to reality. You can see that with that 72 square feet.
The yield. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Okay. One other one related to this tear out non-salvageable floating floor, no bagging, right? This is an existing line item. There is a slight update to the direct yield here from 42 to 41. Probably in line with them looking at the new no bagging line items around non-salvageable floating floor and just making slight adjustments. All right, additional item information changes. These are changes that don't have new components or changes in yields, but the additional item information was changed so just to clarify some confusion in the industry. First off, light fixtures. There was a new statement in these line items in the additional item information that says, in all 5 of these, fixture may have LED capabilities. So you and I were talking about lights, older lights, ballast, things like this. Kind of explain, why did Xact need to clarify that these light fixture line items may have LED capabilities?
Well, first I have to say I'm not absolutely sure. So there's 2 lines of thinking. One, some of the fixtures are coming out from Home Depot and Lowe's that actually have LED light bulbs in them. And it's believed that these LED bulbs are going to last so long that they'll really last the life of the fixture. So that might have been why. But Harrison challenged that line of thinking. And I think he might be right in that a lot of these old, especially like what's imaged there, light fixtures that might have taken fluorescent bulbs, they have ballast, and ballast aren't particularly compatible with LED bulbs. And so all their pricing bar was really trying to say was these are light fixtures that may be compatible with LED lights and wouldn't require any other special concessions. So what's happening is there's just this convergence of the technology evolving to LED, and the pricing department's just in this juxtaposition of like, well, we still need fluorescent light fixtures. And a lot of times as a claim professional, you're trying to write a scope relative to what the policyholder had. And
what was there,
what was there, as opposed to like how you're going to put it back. But Xact needs to walk that line. So we find ourselves there right now today in July 2021 at this perfect inflection point of like, okay, we got to have fluorescent bulbs, but we kind of want to mention that LED is definitely a thing now. If you're in California, it's like the only thing you can even buy with money. And they're doing their best to kind of walk that line.
What kind of light fixtures can I buy without money? Those are the exciting light fixtures.
You gotta go black market, man. You need to get some Dogecoin
black market
on that.
LED lights. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, so if you want like a regular incandescent bulb, right? Like in California,
you gotta go. Deep.
You gotta go out to Mar-a-Lago and go to the bathroom and steal some light bulbs, fly them back out here.
Yeah. So one thing to point out here, you talked about the bulbs It's been a very well-known common fact, but if you don't know, almost all light fixtures do not include bulbs. Light bulbs are meant to be invoiced for separately. And these line items, these light fixture line items still exclude light bulbs, meaning you are supposed to be invoicing for the bulb separately. But yeah, I think they're just trying to clarify here that, hey, maybe it was an older light fixture. Great. This is the line item that you would use to invoice for replacing it. Hey, you're installing a new LED light fixture. Great. This is the line item that would generally be used for that. So that they're trying to provide some flexibility for people settling claims, regardless of the technical capabilities of that light fixture. One other group of line item changes here, the slate roofing line items, was clarified that cant strips are not included. You and I pulled up a picture here to prepare to kind of better explain. I'll zoom in on this graphic here. These cant strips here. So we then wanted to clarify that these slate roofing line items did not include the cant strips.
Yeah, so this is relevant when you're doing like a parapet wall roofing installation. This is a contractor-centric adjustment to clarify that it in fact doesn't include it. Therefore, it may warrant the inclusion of that separate line item for cant strips. So got to take the good with the bad, folks. That one went your way, you contractor ninjas out there. This was a positive update to the additional item information.
Yeah, and just to show you what that does, this is one of my favorite examples of Xact. First of all, in June, there was no excludes. In July, there's excludes cant strips. And then I love it when they send you to the line item that you need. Right? Don't make me goose chase every line item that might be relevant and related. It's nice to just say, hey, these are not included. If you need them, here's the line item. Simple, effective.
Yep.
All right. Lastly, in the miscellaneous changes section, which means nothing really happened or changed, but like something changed. So I got to talk about it because it's a change, and that's what we do in this video. Oh, wow. I moved too fast with my mouse. Okay. Here we go. Modified note of the CHF exercise equipment to reference that dumbbells and free weight sets are additional examples of exercise equipment. So where does this come from? I think this is related to the whole world being shut down for a year, and then everybody had to go buy their own dumbbells and home equipment sets. And now all of a sudden, everybody has those at home. So you need to clarify that when you are cleaning exercise equipment, it now includes dumbbells and free weights, because those are popping up more often in residential environments as people try to stay fit while in their homes. So that's what we got for you. That is the month of July 2021, 27 new line items, a bunch of important line item changes. Thank you for finding us, whether you are watching this on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit. Getinsights.org is always the best place to watch these videos down below. Every line item we've talked about will be there, and it'll be hyperlinked to this video, and you can just click on the line item and go straight to us talking about it. Super efficient. We don't want to waste your time at all, ever, right? You guys got enough stuff to do. We're here to help. That's all we try to do here at Actionable Insights. So on behalf of Actionable Insights, Whatley and myself, thank you, everybody. Looking forward to the new line. Oh, that's a good point. New things coming. We like just kind of give a preview of what's coming. Future changes and additions, rekeying a lock set, hydronic solar panels, and removing drywall on high walls for water mitigation. So hopefully those are some fun changes that we can talk about in the August price list. But until then, good luck out there and keep settling those claims.
Keep building, folks. Be good.